Yeah.
Okay, next one's coming down.
Oh.
Oh!
So, I heard you did an egg drop project. Yeah, it was really cool. It was a lot of fun. It was great. So, how'd you do it? Did you meet the design parameters, all that cool stuff? Like, what kind of brainstorming options do you look at? So, Garrett came over one day, and what we decided to do was we decided to use our staple shoebox. It was pretty cool, you know. We started out with a Nike one, and we just went from there. So, what else did you do? Did you add anything to the shoebox, or like what did you try to do to make the egg survive? Because obviously that's your question. How do you get the egg to survive 100 feet? Well, we decided to throw on some soda cans, you know, 4 on the top and bottom to, you know, slow the impact and decrease how much force it was hitting the ground with. Because everybody knows F equals MA, you know? FMA. Yeah, I know FMA. I'm quite familiar, thank you. I don't need any of the condescending attitude. But yeah, I just want to know, what did you do on the inside of the shoebox? That's kind of what I'm interested in. Well, it was pretty neat actually. So what we decided to do is we were looking at past projects and saw what worked, and we decided to insulate it with bread. Now, we decided to go for the nasty stuff because we're kind of cheap like that. So white bread from Walmart, don't eat it, you'll die of poisoning. But that's what we decided to use on the inside. Well, you still haven't told me about the egg. What are you doing with it? I haven't even heard a single thing about it. Well, darn right you haven't, Jimmy, because we're getting there, okay? There's a build-up. Come on, everybody knows these acts of comedy. So, we decided to put the egg in Vaseline, okay? And that's so it has a viscous substance to move around in, but without actually hitting anything. So, how would it do that? Wouldn't it still be going the same speed? You don't want it hitting the container or anything. Well, no, it wouldn't, because Vaseline is so thick that when the egg moves, it will actually move with a lesser speed due to how much the object is falling. So it won't move as fast, it'll actually move quite slow. Well, did you just decide to have it with a Vaseline container? I mean, that doesn't seem like a lot. Bread and Vaseline? That's it? That's all you had on the inside? Or is that it? Well, no, Arnold, that isn't it, okay? We decided to put the Vaseline into a Tupperware container filled with more bread. 2 for 89 cents, okay? This is the best quality, okay? Trust me, we got this, Jimmy. So is that your whole project? Is that all you did? I mean, it sounds pretty cool, but are you gonna go in depth about it? Well, of course, Reggie. I mean, that's what we're all about here at Egg Drop Films Incorporated, okay? That's our main goal, and we're gonna blow your mind, Jimmy. We're gonna blow it. So do you have any pictures? I mean, I can't picture it unless you like actually show me something. God. Well, of course I do. Right here.
So how would you define the problem?
So the problem given to us by our physics teacher, Mr. Radloff. Best teacher in the world, by the way. Hey, okay. But the problem was that we had to keep an egg safe by compiling a structure around it so that when it fell from 100 feet, that it would survive. Also, part of the challenge was that we had to incorporate a water bottle that was filled with our structure, which was part of a challenge.
So, what kind of research would you have to done for that?
So, for the research, we just searched up, like, how to make... What I did was, we wanted to make sure the egg wouldn't crack, right? So we looked about how the egg could hit the ground but have a slower impact, because obviously it's going to be hitting ground. That's one of the guarantees.
So what kind of research did you do?
So the research I did was that I was interested in slowing the impact. That was my main field of it. So a lot of the ideas that I saw were having something between the ground and the egg to absorb the impact so that when it hit the ground, the egg wouldn't take the full force, or a parachute so that the egg would take the force but it would actually hit slower, so to the point where the egg would not crack. So that is what I built the project. Garrett and I built the project around when we did our research.
So what kind of parameters do you have? Would you want to show us a picture of that?
Yeah, no problem. So the parameters given to us were that we could not use bubble wrap, soft foam, marshmallow products, egg cartons, stuffing, including pillow, craft, cotton, and other such items, peanut butter or nut products, and paper. Then the size constraints were that it could not be 40 centimeters in any direction before the drop, and after the drop it could not exceed 60 centimeters. And the constraints are certainly a factor because it decided whether we were going to put a parachute on our structure or not, and we ended up going for the not because we didn't want to lose points on the engineering.
So how did you and I, Garrett, brainstorm all this up?
So Garrett ended up coming over to my house one day, and we were just like thinking about ideas that we could incorporate in our structure. We really wanted to try something interesting, so we decided to go for the impact because that was lessening the impact because that was a good starting ground, and it obviously is one of our main focuses. So we just started spurting off ideas that came to our head, and we ended up coming with the shoebox as our basis because that's what was lying around, and we ended up using the bread from a previous project because that's what we heard it worked. We also ended up using the soda cans just because they were cheap and you could put them on top and they would absorb a little bit of impact so that our egg wouldn't hit with the full force. And then we put the egg in the Vaseline, obviously, so that it would move around slowly in the viscous liquid. Also, we put the egg and the Vaseline inside another container so that the Vaseline container itself would not be hitting the shoebox or any of the surrounding objects.
All right, cool. Do you have any pictures of this?
Yeah, of course.
Wow, would you look at that?
Oh my god.
So in this video where you drop it off Terrace Park, which is only around 50 feet, how did that compare to when we dropped it for 100 feet?
So at 50 feet, the impact, it did not gain as much acceleration or speed because obviously the mass factors in. But since it wasn't dropping off 100, it did not have as much acceleration, and its velocity was not as great as it would have been at 100. So when we dropped it off, it was a misjudgment on our part, thinking that it would survive from such a distance, even though it had survived at the 50 feet. So we thought it would be sturdy enough, but it wasn't.
Man, when it hit at the high school, it looked like it hit pretty hard.
Yeah, it actually hit around 8,500 newtons.
Man, that's like a lot because it only takes 2,300 to crush a human skull.
Well, obviously, we're just going to show you a demonstration using our small egg-shaped sized rock. Now, here we go. Exactly like that would have happened. I mean, that's it. That's it, folks.
That's a pretty conclusive test right there. So what are the physics behind this?
Well, we're going to demonstrate it by showing you how it works with this egg-sized shaped rock here. It's at rest when the fireman's holding it. So at the very start here, as I'm holding it,
As it gets further from Caleb's hand, you can see as its acceleration increases by 9.8 meters per second every second. And from Caleb's hand, it's not moving, but when it hits the water, it's hitting with quite a bit of force.
This is due to it resembling free fall motion. Of course, this, it's theoretical, but we're not really counting for air resistance. As it is a rock, it's round, so you're not going to get too much air resistance as you would a coin or a piece of paper. So now we're going to talk about it during impact. You can obviously see where it hits the water. You can see the rock as it hits the water, and you can see where it breaks the surface tension right here. And that is much like it when it hits the ground, except it's unlike water, which has a surface tension, but it's still hitting with the same amount of force. Wait, is that recording?
Yes, you can put your clothes back on.
So, evaluating the project. So, yeah, it failed. The egg shattered into a billion, bajillion, little million pieces, okay? Let's not talk about it. But we are going to talk about it because we have to. But, seriously, looking back on the project, we probably should have duct taped the Vaseline lid. After the Vaseline lid had exploded, a lot of it had come out of the original container, and the egg and the container itself was shattered, the lid. So our guess is, our best working theory right now is the fact that the egg hit the container in the plastic bag as it was going up and cracked. Because the whole project looked very similar to when we had dropped it from Terrace Park Elementary. That both water bottles had shattered like they had. All the bread looked the same. The soda cans looked fine. And the structure had actually tilted a little bit, so it landed, instead of landing straight down it like it had at TP Elementary, it landed on its side a little bit, meaning that more of the impact had hit the box instead of the soda cans because they weren't fully crushed like last time. You rudely interrupted me! Anyways, okay, so looking back on all the engineering decisions that we had made during this project before we filmed this video and how we talked about the engineering design process during this video, we've applied some of the physics terms that we've looked into that describe what our choices and how we went about this. So we were looking at it, and one word that comes to mind is agent. And the bread could be described as an agent because it's absorbing the shock of the kinetic energy that the object had due to inertia. An object in motion stays in motion, or an object at rest will stay at rest because of how high of a height it fell from and how fast it was coming towards the ground. We also know that the center of gravity was the middle of the container, you know, with the Vaseline, which is obviously heaviest, and the egg inside of it with the bread in the bigger Tupperware container was the center of gravity because it had the most mass. And maybe that was a hindsight on our part, because what we should have done is maybe dispelled the mass evenly amongst the shoebox so that it wasn't hitting the hardest in the area that we didn't want it to break. Another term that also comes to mind would be momentum, because the mass and velocity also played a huge part in the shoebox coming down. We tried to lessen this by incorporating the soda cans, which was to decrease the momentum and impact, but it didn't succeed as well as a parachute would have, and that's also a hindsight on our part.